Roger Scruton, The Soul of the World. Embark on an enlightening journey through the intellectual landscape of The Soul of the World by Roger Scruton, where reason and faith intertwine to unlock the greater depths of our beliefs. Delve into the critical distinction between the emotional core of religion and the intellectual pursuit of science, and explore how evolutionary psychology offers a limited perspective on the content of our beliefs. Scruton guides us through various concepts such as cognitive dualism, the importance of non-contractual bonds, and the role of art and classical music in our lives. Discover how religion equips us to confront life and death, and how embracing the concept of sacred gifts allows us to experience the divine.
The limitations of reason and evolution in understanding religion. Reason and faith are often perceived as incompatible ways of explaining the world, but this misjudges the true nature of religion. While science may debunk the metaphysical beliefs of religion, it ignores the emotional needs that it fulfills. Similarly, the explanation of religion as an adaptation of evolutionary psychology is limited as it fails to explain the content of human beliefs. Evolutionary psychology can explain why we have religious sentiment, but it falls short in explaining the aboutness of our beliefs. The content of our beliefs, like the taboos surrounding incest, cannot be solely explained through evolutionary perspective, as some individuals are tempted by forbidden desires despite the potential negative outcomes. Thus, while reason and evolution have their place in understanding the world, they are limited in providing a complete understanding of religion and its role in our lives. The search for intersubjective encounters. Religious seekers are on a pursuit to find an interpersonal relationship with God, a transcendent and timeless subject. Despite the challenge of experiencing God directly, rituals, prayers, and encounters with the sacred provide a sense of connection. Philosophers define persons as entities straddling the line between object and subject, which uncovers a cognitive dualism in viewing the world. Though religious individuals may not necessarily attempt to bend God's will to theirs, they see God as a subject and look to connect with Him in a subject-to-subject encounter. Two ways of understanding reality. The book explains how cognitive dualism enables us to understand the world through two different lenses, science and interpersonal understanding. The latter considers reasons rather than causes and relationships between persons instead of the behavior of biological organisms. Through this lens, we view the world as a world of life or Lebenswelt, in which agency and accountability exist. The concept of cognitive dualism does not disregard biology but allows for a second way of understanding reality. By prioritizing interpersonal understanding, we can study art, responsibility, and free will comprehensively. Neuroscience, free will, and subjectivity. The limitations of neuroscience in explaining subjectivity do not negate the reality of free will. Our search for the intangible essence of personhood is what drives our belief in the idea of I and you subjectivity. Moral education teaches us to treat others as subjects, even if free will is just a myth. The question of whether freedom, responsibility, and accountability are merely inventions of our imagination is a fascinating one, especially in light of well-known neuroscience experiments that suggest our brains drive our actions. However, such an interpretation misses the mark of intentionality and how we view ourselves and others as subjects. While neuroscience can't pinpoint the exact location of a person's I, it isn't sufficient to conclude that free will is a myth. Ultimately, our attitudes toward individuals are what matter. We engage in interpersonal attitudes to seek out others' subjectivity, assuming that they have unified centers of self. This idea is foundational to moral education, which teaches us always to treat others as subjects, even when it may be challenging. By embracing this concept, we can ensure that we honor the inherent value of every human being, regardless of whether free will is scientifically valid or not. The power and limits of contracts. Humans' ability to create obligations, promises and commitments with language separates us from animals. Laws and institutions give us freedom, but when a contractual lens is applied to all relationships, bonds that go beyond negotiations become undervalued. The problem with defining rights is that it creates a boundary of me or mine, which can lead to selfish desires. Contracts are essential, but some bonds do not require them. These transcendent bonds, such as friendship and love, tie people together in a kind of shared destiny. Marriage, for example, is a vow that goes beyond a contractual obligation, and communities need marriages that are more than just contracts for the security of their children. Societies dominated by contractual bonds become consumed by selfish desires and lack of true obligations. Building our personhood. Aristotle believed that certain things can only be understood through observation of their final form. Personhood is our final form, just like an oak tree is the final form of an acorn. Our built environments reflect our attitudes toward ourselves. According to Aristotle, understanding something means observing its final form or the way it develops. Our essence allows us to become persons, just like an acorn develops into an oak tree. The construction and establishment of our living areas are critical to our growth as persons. The key takeaway from the book is how our built environment demonstrates our attitudes non-verbally. Immanuel Kant states that appearances are not merely empirical but the product of subject-object interactions, with contemplation being one of the postures we can take towards objects. Sacred architecture serves as an ideal example. Temples and churches, for example, have subjectivity and act as places where God's subjectivity resides. They are living objects that can influence an individual positively. Modern architecture, on the other hand, as opposed to conventional buildings designed to have human-like faces, focuses on usefulness to the detriment of subjectivity. This notion has a significant impact on the individual's perception of existing within the architecture. The buildings have no unique features, making room for people to become utilized like machine cogs instead of life-living beings. In conclusion, our built environment plays a crucial role in our growth as persons. Modern architecture has shifted from subjectivity to usefulness, which has negatively impacted our perception of self-existence. The importance of subjectivity in classical music. Unlike in science, art cannot be understood through experiments or analyses of its physical properties. Evolutionary psychologists who claim that art, music, and literature are mere adaptations developed to aid in our survival are missing the point. These disciplines offer meaning and value to our lives beyond survival. Classical music, for instance, offers subjectivity as we search for meaning in the composer's choices. Modern music prioritizes pre-made rhythms and lacks complexity, failing to elicit the same emotional response. By connecting our subjectivity with the music, we can gain vital emotional education and a sense that we're not alone. The weight of life and death. The book explores how religion provides answers to the fundamental question of why in the face of life and death. While science can only answer in terms of causes, religion offers reasons that go beyond the physical realm. Through religious rituals, individuals can connect with the divine and experience a sense of fulfillment and purpose. The concept of gifts is central to this idea. Being is not an accident, but a gift from God. Regardless of one's beliefs, the book encourages readers to develop a reverential mindset in their everyday lives, enabling a shared human experience of the sacred.
As we conclude our exploration of the soul of the world, we have learned that religion and science are not in direct opposition, but rather they each address distinct aspects of our human existence. While science focuses on causes, religion deals with reasons, offering a fuller understanding and a richer life experience. Scruton helps us comprehend the necessity of grappling with the mysteries of subjectivity, intersubjective encounters with the transcendental, and the indispensable role of art, music, and sacred rituals in our lives. Ultimately, the book teaches us to appreciate the beauty in sacred gifts and the vital role that religion plays in accessing the deeper truths of our human experience.